And we're here to talk about overcoming a criminal record. We're going to be talking about expungements, we're going to be talking about pardons, and other sort of programs available to individuals with criminal records. Unfortunately, expungements are limited in scope, but we're going to talk about that specifically, and then we're going to talk about other ways that might be able to help. So today we're going to be talking, like I said, I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we do at South Carolina Legal Services. We're going to talk about criminal records in general. We're also going to talk about then the expungements, pardons, federal bonding program, and then this new expungement law that just passed last month. So just quickly, just to let you know who we are and what we do. We are a private, nonprofit, statewide law firm, and we provide free legal assistance to qualified low-income residents of South Carolina. We do not charge application fees. We do not charge attorney's fees. You can apply by telephone or online. We're bound by attorney-client confidentiality, but we are not a government agency. We are a statewide nonprofit law firm.
And the South Carolina Legal Services is the name?
Yes, that is the name. Sometimes people refer it to legal aid, but the name of our statewide organization is South Carolina Legal Services. The Greenville office, we're located in downtown Greenville. We serve Pickens, Anderson, Oconee, and Greenville County. What type of cases do we do? All sorts of civil cases. We do not handle any criminal cases, but we handle a wide variety of civil cases, anything from consumer, education, employment, family, health, housing, elder law, probate, all sorts of cases that we can handle. But like I said, nothing criminal. And this is just quickly if you ever needed to apply for our services. We can do it by phone. It's available online. In some circumstances, we can do applications in person in our office. If you've been served with papers, we can make exceptions. We also have Anderson intakes now. That is going to be twice a month on Mondays at the South Main Chapel and Mercy Center. So we're not just limited to the Greenville office at this period.
Is that 346-5596?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. And that's open Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And you can also apply online at sclegal.org. Not every single type of case that we handle is available, but it's worth trying because that is available 24 hours a day, and you can apply online.
Do you assist with the expungements at this firm?
In certain cases we do, absolutely, so it might be worth applying. In most expungement cases, you might not need an attorney to help you, but in certain cases we have certain clients who might have limited abilities, might have special needs, and they're able to apply, and we have a few pending expungement cases. But then we help reviewing criminal records and then applying on behalf of the client to the solicitor's office.
For the expungement?
For the expungement, if applicable. So what is a criminal record? It actually this is a broad term that can mean a lot of things. Some people call it a rap sheet, and that's any sort of from SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, and the FBI. Those would be here in South Carolina the agencies that would be reporting on a criminal record. You also have court records that's open to the public. You have the public index. The public index is anybody is available to view any sort of civil or criminal case that is pending or in the past for any individual. And that's something that we're going to talk about that a little bit later as to how you can get information from that. And there's private databases, and these are pre-employment screening companies that do just this. So those can be all the different criminal records and the areas where they may be contained. So how does a criminal record affect you? It can be very serious. It can affect your job, professional licensing, public benefits, housing, your voting rights. And so we also want to make sure that you know about your voting rights if you have a criminal record. So you can vote if you have finished your sentence, and you can vote absentee if you are in jail awaiting trial or for child support contempt. You cannot vote if you're currently incarcerated, and you cannot vote if you're on probation or parole. But remember, once you become eligible again to vote, you have to re-register. And so here's the website and the telephone numbers to re-register for that. So this is what I mentioned earlier about the public index. This is a really helpful free tool. And so one of the things you can do, and you can go onto several websites, the South Carolina court records, but you can also just do a Google. Like if I need to do Anderson County Public Index, that's one of the first results that you're going to get. And once you get on there, you can search, John Smith, and it'll pull up, and sometimes it might be a popular name, it might pull up a lot of results, you might have to add a middle name, but once all those results, you can also identify an individual by their date of birth. You have to look individually. But that's a great way to, you have to do it by each judicial circuit, so that is individual, but that is a great free way to review to see if there's anything, to see if there's any records on any criminal past. So on the SLED report, that is going to be the most comprehensive. This costs $25 to get, but everything that's going to be on there is going to be convictions, arrests, even if there was no conviction. There's going to be dismissed charges, not prosecuted charges, and surprisingly, not guilty verdicts. So we have people who have a criminal record, maybe there's nothing else in their criminal record, they were charged with something and found not guilty, that might be still listed on there. And so that person thinks, well, I was found not guilty, therefore I have no criminal record. That is not true. You have to check to make sure that it's not on there, because that could be limiting somebody from getting employment or housing, and those should, after 2009, should automatically come off after 2009, but not all of them do. And if you do have a not guilty verdict on there, those are free to remove for the expungement process. So what is an expungement? The expungement is the destruction of criminal records related to an arrest or criminal conviction. All court records of the charge or conviction are destroyed. So these charges are no longer reported on that public index that I told you about or on SLED reports. So expungements. This is something that everybody wants, but not everybody can get. So expungement works only for minor or first-time offenses. Its major offenses cannot be expunged. And so this is the little part where it might be a little tedious, but we're going to go through 9 categories where any sort of entries on your criminal record can be expunged. And the first one, I just sort of mentioned earlier, non-convictions. Any arrest or charges that did not result in a conviction. So if your charges were dismissed, if the prosecutor decided not to pursue the charges, or if you had not guilty verdicts. All of these should, now should all automatically come off your record. If they do not, you can apply to have them expunged, and that's at no cost. But those things that you see some people on their records, those should not be in any way on your criminal record. And like I said, this is the only one that is free. So if you have, and just where to apply, so if you had dismissed, not prosecuted, and not guilty charges, you go ahead and you go to the court where you were charged in. All other expungements, you have to go to the solicitor's office in the arresting team. The second category is PTI, pretrial intervention. If you have been charged with a minor crime and the solicitor decides to put you through the pretrial intervention program, and that could be some sort of community service, it could be some re-education program, and you successfully complete it, and the solicitor agrees and decides to dismiss those charges, then that arrest and those charges can be expunged. You'd have to pay the $250 to the solicitor and the $35 to the clerk of court. Category 3 is the alcohol education program. This is similar. Again, if you have alcohol-related charges that the solicitor proposes you to do the alcohol education program, you successfully complete it, then again, that is expungible, and you can apply again, same thing, solicitor, and then you have to pay the clerk of court to have that record expunged. Fraudulent check, first offense misdemeanor conviction under the fraudulent check law. You cannot have any other criminal conviction within a year. And the same thing as far as where you apply. Marijuana, conditional discharge. If you have a first offense of simple possession of marijuana or hashish, and we're going to talk about this one about in 6 months. There's a new law that's going to go effect that actually expands on this. But right now, there's a conviction of first offense, simple possession of marijuana, and you received a conditional discharge, and you complied with the terms of your conditional discharge. That is expungable. Now this is the most general catch-all one of all the expungements. If you had a first offense with a crime carrying a penalty of no more than 30 days, or it was $1,000, no other convictions within 3 years, 5 years, if it was a criminal domestic violence, then that can be expunged. What cannot be expunged, wildlife and gaming violations or traffic offenses. But if you just have one simple minor criminal conviction on your record and you comply with the 3-year, 5 years, then that is expungible.
Free of charge.
No.
Does that count DUIs too?
No, DUI is not as simple. Yeah, so no traffic offenses or motor, so this is continued, so it's the same thing as far as it has to be made by check or money order, solicitor, clerk of court, and then the $25 to SLED. Same thing under the first offense, youthful offender. You had to be 17 to 25. Some actual felonies are included in here. It just can't be a violent felony. But same thing, if it's no additional conviction within 5 years, that is expungible. So failure to stop for law enforcement vehicle, that was just a misdemeanor. This is the only traffic violation that can be expunged. No other traffic violations can be expunged. And lastly is the juvenile offenses. So again, nonviolent and any completion of any conditional discharge. If those are all successfully completed, again, this is the last category of offenses that can be expunged. So the process in order to go through the expungement, first thing is, check the public index. That's the one that's for free, see what's on there. But the best one to do that is to get your SLED report. That is $25. And then you can see what charges can be expunged. Everybody should have this handout, and it goes through, so you don't have to remember, everybody has those 9 categories of expungible offenses. Each solicitor's office and each county where those charges are registered, you have to apply at that solicitor's office. And there should be a person designated in each solicitor's office that just handles the expungements. It's a little bit of a long process, but it's some of them are not making you apply, not making you to pay to apply first. You can apply, they're going to see if anything's expungible, but technically you're supposed to pay the $250 before you apply. But like I said, some counties are allowing you to apply, see if there's any expungible, and if you want to move forward, then you go ahead and pay the fee.
Do you have to get the applications from that person in each county?
Yeah, each county has separate applications that they might be available online, but if you just call the general solicitor's office in each county, they'll have somebody who's designated to handle that.
Do y'all have a list of names of who handles which?
No, because they're kind of changing, so it's just best to call the solicitor's office. I had recently, when we started doing expungements, it was a little bit hard to actually track down the green. Well, this is sort of a new thing that's been kind of in the news, so they're all trying to designate the person. It is required by law, and so, but you'll find it out as far as not all of them are available online though. So, for example, this is what an order for destruction of arrest records looks like, and so that would be what would be issued by the court to destroy your court records. And so after you get that order, you would probably want to wait a few months and then check the public index or run your SLED report again to make sure that those entries have been removed. So there's also a procedure if there are erroneous charges or convictions. If they made a mistake, you check your record and there's something on there that is not attributable to you. They do also have a procedure on SLED's website at sled.sc.gov, and they'll tell you, how to get that removed from your record if they're erroneous. At that point, they're going to have to do fingerprints to match criminal records, but they can go ahead and correct any errors on your SLED report. So, we talked about, as I said, expungements are very limited. It's only first offenses, minor crimes are expungible. So as a plan B, we talk about pardons. And pardon is available to everybody for every crime. And so it is not the same as an expungement. An expungement wipes out your criminal record. The pardon, you'll still have a criminal record, it'll just say next to it, pardon. But that looks a lot better than having a criminal record, and you can apply for every and all criminal entries on your criminal record. So that is something, like I said, it does not remove it, but at least it's noted as pardon. I think that is a good alternative to have something showing on your criminal record that you've gone through the Department of Parole and they have pardoned you for all your criminal charges. And so as far as it depends on when you're eligible to do it. So if you've been discharged from a sentence, you can do it at any time after that. So you won't, but you can't be granted a pardon unless all restitution and collection fees have been paid in full. That's the one condition. But you can apply at any time, and like I said, apply for all criminal entries. And you don't need to hire an attorney to do the pardon. We have the application available on this website. I actually, for anybody who's interested, on your way out, I have the instructions and the application right here. You also you do need to have 3 letters of reference. It can't be a family member, but it can be anybody, an employer, a friend, a neighbor, and you have to have a filing fee. So it takes a long time. It can be about 7 to 9 months before you get your hearing, and you do have to have a hearing, and you have to go before the department. Then you have to bring up to 3 people to testify on your behalf. These people can be your family members, that's okay. Victims are informed, and they have a right to testify, and the pardon must be approved by 5 of the 7 board members. But it's really a good opportunity to do so because over 60% of pardons are granted. So it's a long process, but it's worth it because it has a fairly high success rate. And again, this is what the application will look like. Like I said, I have copies over here for anybody who's interested. And so the process again is similar to expungement. Get your SLED report, see what's on there. But like I said, everything is eligible for a pardon. You fill out the pardon application, you attach a letter explaining why you should be eligible for a pardon. You have your 3 letters of reference, you mail it in with your money order, and then it takes about 6 to 9 months for them to investigate, and your hearing should only last about 5 to 15 minutes. So let's talk about then the federal bonding program. We call this as Plan C. So let's say you have a criminal record, nothing's eligible on there. Maybe you don't want to go through the pardon process. Certain employees might be eligible for the federal bonding program because certain employers don't want to hire persons with criminal records because their liability insurance might not let them. So this program provides a bonding program for persons who've been denied coverage because they want to hire anybody with a criminal record, and it bonds them, and their license allows them to hire people with a criminal record, and that employer won't be responsible for any sort of activity related to that employee. It's free, it's both to the applicant and the employer. Actually, it's usually you have to apply through the SE Works local office. The applicant receives a letter confirming that they're eligible for the bond, so that is really helpful. And you can activate the bond simply by calling. There is no written application. And so this is something that Ms. Susan Ingalls here handles, but the Criminal Records and the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So if you apply for a job and they run a criminal record report on you and they deny or employment, and that's the reason that they're going to deny you employment, this requires a clear written notice that report may be sought and written authorization. So if they decide not to hire you based on what they find on your criminal record, they have to provide you with a copy of that record, and you have a right to review it. So this new law, our state legislature just tried to pass a bill that expanded the provisions of the expungement law that I just talked about. The governor vetoed that bill, but it was overridden by both the House and the Senate. So the new changes to this expungement law, it goes into effect in about 6 months. They're adding a first offense simple possession or possession with intent to distribute drugs to the list of offenses that are eligible for expungement. It also amended the section related to fees associated with the expungement process. So now, because it is costly to apply for this expungements, they are allowing for the solicitor's office to set up a fund where people can donate to that program, and those were going to be allowed for on a first-come, first-served basis. It adds a section to provide immunity for employers who hire persons whose criminal records have been expunged so that they can't be sued for negligent hiring. And they clarify and expand some of the existing categories of expungement.
Yes, ma'am. Can you go back to a previous one?
Sure.
And all of these is on.
No, the criminal records, no. This is just under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's not in the handouts. Okay, so this is again our website and our application number. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have at this time. And so, you know, the last expungement workshop that we did, I had some questions at that time, so maybe I'll go ahead and present those questions to get going. So what, you know, after you get an expungement, like I said, all arrest records, all court records are destroyed. But what about private databases, mugshots.com? You know, what about it, that information is being reported on there? So at the time, for up to a couple of years ago, there was nothing to be done about that. So your SLED report might not show that you have any criminal convictions, but mugshots.com was having all your information. It has your arrest photo, it had all your criminal charges on there, and so there was nothing to be done about that. So our state legislature did pass a law last year, it went into effect last year, and that law allows you to pursue action against any private database that is publishing your information. You have to send a certified letter to them, and then you have to provide a copy of your expungement record, and they are required to take it down by law. So, yeah.
You have a copy of that sheet you just said? That, like if you look up something, they show it.
Yeah, I can tell you this. I mean, there's a relevant
Can
section.
you repeat the question?
Huh?
Repeat the question.
Oh, the question was as far as your
They
question
said
was-
if you just look it up and then
Yeah.
you wanted to take, yeah, how do you go about it?
Yeah, so the statute just tells you specifically, it just says you have to write a letter, you have to send it certified, and that's what's a little bit tricky with these websites because you have to find a mailing address for them, so it has to be sent to their central business office, and that can be a little hard to locate. But if you can locate that, you send them a certified letter with a copy of your expungement record, and they have 30 days to take it down.
If my criminal background was say in a different state, would that affect me here?
Well, no, so as far as if an employer runs the SLED report, it's only going to be for South Carolina charges. But some of, if they're going to use one of these private companies that do employment checks, they might go national, they might check FBI. And so if you have, crimes in different states, you can only expunge, crimes in South Carolina. Yeah, so no, but I mean, you have to go to each different state, they're going to have different laws for expungement.
Right.
So, okay, all right, because in January I'm moving to Maryland.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, when they do background check, they only do it for Maryland.
It depends. So some of them might, like I said, it's easy for employers who don't want to save a little bit of money, and they're just going to, check the public index here in South Carolina. They're not going to go through the full background check process. So it depends on if they're going to be just checking the state where you're living in, or if they're going to go national, FBI, and so forth. But it depends. But this is only for South Carolina.
Can you have, once you're convicted of something, can you have that removed that's going to fit a certain category? Because I was told by Pickens County you can't get anything removed that you're convicted of.
No, so we talked about those 9 categories, you have it in the handout. Those 9 categories, if you were convicted of those crimes and then you're eligible, I mean, it has if it was like the conditional discharge, 5 years, whatever the requirements are, if you have that one one of those categories and you meet the eligibility, that is expungible by law.
And you have to meet each
Yes.
Okay.
So they're all listed on there as far as some of them are easier, but if you just had, that simple possession of drugs and it's been a year, you have nothing else, or for the fraudulent check, it was a first offense and you have nothing else, and you meet the eligibility, it is expungible. Yes.
So are you saying this is only for South Carolina?
Yes.
Like I went through this expunge class in Florida about 15 years ago. So it's the same, some of the words are the same, but
Right.
some of it is different. So like the pardon thing, that doesn't go for, like you were saying, if somebody just go look you up.
Right, so the pardon is gonna show, like I said, the pardon doesn't destroy your criminal record, you'll still have a criminal record, but next to it, it'll show pardon, which I think goes a long way to show.
Oh, yeah, it does.
But
Yeah,
it's
'cause
only
I've
gonna be
had
for
that
South
done.
Carolina, yeah, it's only gonna be for South Carolina crime, so not Florida.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I have a question, I'm asking this for my daughter, because she's working, but, you said the alcohol education program.
Mhm.
She didn't realize she could do PTI, so, it has here on her paperwork circled, and we just don't understand a lot of this. I've tried to call and ask questions, but is that the same as PrEP merchant education program for alcohol and tobacco?
Well, it depends, I don't know exactly depending on each program, so it should be that if the solicitor, instead of pursuing charges, because it'll show, so if you get charged with a crime, minor, simple offense, and then the solicitor recommends, and it doesn't have to be a specific name, it's just in general the alcohol education program, like the PTI, they can do different types of community service and trainings and so forth. And if you successfully complete it, and the solicitor is satisfied that you successfully completed it, they'll dismiss the charges. And so what's listed then on your study report are the charges, but they've been dismissed. And so that's what's expungible, meaning they're gonna wipe that off completely.
Okay, so it's still there.
It's still there, but if you successfully completed it, then that's expungible.
Okay, and you don't have to wait the 3 years?
It depends, each category is separate as far as, if there's no other charges, I have to.
Yeah, I mean, she paid a fine, it was a one-time thing.
If the fine, usually if it was, like I said, if it was a minor offense and under $1,000 or 30 days in jail, it might qualify for the other category, called that overall category 6. And so that one, like I said, if the charges were, the fine was less than $1,000 or 30 days in jail or less, then, and she had no other charges, then might qualify for that category.
Okay, so we just need to contact, after completion of this class, the solicitor's office in our area.
Oh, so she hasn't completed the program yet?
No,
Okay.
it's not available yet, there's not
Right.
enough people to take it. so-
Okay, yeah, so exactly, so that one would be if she successfully completes it, but the solicitor would have then had to dismiss the charges. Like I said, it'll still show as arrested and charged, but then that's why, if you successfully complete it, then that's
She can
expungable.
apply for
Yeah,
extension of the.
exactly, because it'll show like dismissed, or it'll show completed, but it still shows up when they run your criminal record report, so that's why it's worth doing the expungement, because it'll wipe it off completely.
Because we pulled up the application for the PTI expungement, but they said we couldn't do that one because she didn't do PTI.
Okay,
So we weren't sure, we tried to fill out the right paperwork, but maybe the solicitor's office can guide us.
yeah, so there is a person supposed to be designated in each solicitor's office, so when you call a solicitor's office, says, I have a question about expungement, and they should direct you to the person who is just in charge of doing that.
Okay.
They'll tell you, here's the application, and then when you apply, they're gonna run it to make sure you're eligible.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, there's a lady behind you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you are paying for your expunges.
Yes, you have to, the only one that you don't have to pay, like I said, if you were not convicted, or they decided to dismiss charges, like I said, those should be automatic.
So either way it go, you're paying, no matter how small or how big, you're still
Yes.
paying.
Yes, absolutely, but it's certainly a small price to pay at the beginning, for the wonderful benefits of that. But like I said, it's 6 months. This new law is supposed to set up a fund, a private donation fund, to help people cover those costs. 'Cause that's been the big issue is, you have this, something that's expungible, and you have, and you're eligible for it, and you can't get work because of the criminal record, but then you can't pay to have it expunged. So-
You know, it is only for like first offenses though.
Right, yeah,
So,
nothing
yeah.
serious, nothing
Mhm.
violent, exactly.
Yeah.
And when you get them expunged, it's $250.
Yes, it's $250, and then the $25 for the clerk of court, or $35 to clerk of court, and then $25 for SLED.
And you have to do it wherever that county came from.
Yes, where the charges are. And then you have to send not just to the solicitor, the clerk of court, and SLED. The SLED then has to destroy their records.
Who's the main person I contact first? For
The solicitor's
solicitor?
office, yes,
Okay.
the solicitor's office, and they're, like I said, just call and say, I have a question about an expungement, they should direct you to the one person in the office who's handling those.
Criminal record, can that affect your ability to be eligible for government programs such as food stamps and housing?
The housing, yes, it depends, you know, and each housing program might have individual eligibility, but some of them, you know, might look back 7 years.
But not the food stamp?
Susie, I don't know about food
I didn't hear the
stamps.
question.
Any,
And drug charges.
for
not the
food stamps, as
stamps.
criminal
They give them to
convictions
you when you get out
affect
there.
eligibility for
In
food
South Carolina,
stamps?
they'll take your food stamps for drug charges. If
Yeah,
they're
if you got drug
felonious,
charges.
and
Yeah,
I think it may have to be a distribution charge.
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, depends on the
No charge.
charge, just
Yeah.
like with this.
Everything depends on the charge.
It really
Mhm.
does, it really
Mhm.
does, and so, like I
You
said,
have drug and violent charges.
I said for most housing programs, it goes back 7 years.
Mhm.
But things like social security benefits, that one.
It's mainly food stamps I was
Yeah.
knowing about.
Yes.
The new law, does it add any charges that can be expunged or any categories?
Yes, it adds one category for just simple possession. Before it was just simple possession of marijuana or hashish. Now it's any simple possession of drugs or simple possession with intent to distribute. That is the one that's been added.
If you had a DUI, and you say a lot of them go back 7 years, if it went back further than that, do you have to have it, would it be necessary to go through the expungement?
I was talking about 7 years for certain public housing programs. They might only look back 7 years at criminal records for certain types of convictions. But as far as the DUI, that's not expungible.
It's not?
No.
But the pardon is available?
Pardon is available for every and any crime.
Do you think employers still consider you if you've just been pardoned, it's still there for them to look at?
I just, you know, if you have a longer criminal record and it shows that, you know, it's been a while, I think it just looks good that, I mean, the Department of Parole and Probation has had a 7, you know, member board talk to you, review, and if they decided that you are eligible for a pardon, I think it looks really good. And the application fees, you know, is less than this one, it's $100, and I think it's worth it to show, you know, if it pops up your criminal record, pardon, pardon, pardon. A lot of people might not understand what a pardon is, you know, a lot of people don't understand the difference between an expungement and a pardon, and so they might think, oh, pardon, they might think the governor pardoned you or something like that, so I think they might not understand it, and I think if they don't understand it, it's not understanding it in your favor.
Oh, yeah, another question, I read and you had said, you go to an employer and then they do a background check and then they don't hire you.
Right.
Because when they see your chart, and we have the right for them to show
Yes,
me.
if they take if they use some sort of database, reporting agency, and based on the results of that report, they decide not to hire you, they have to let you know.
Oh, okay, because I called a temp agency and that happened with, that, I can ask them, give me a copy.
Yes, if they took an adverse
Mhm.
action by
They
not
did background
hiring you,
check. Yeah.
based on just your background check, they have to provide you with a copy of whatever they used.
I didn't know that, so I can do it.
Yes, and then if any
Yep.
additional questions, she is our consumer unit head, so
Okay.
she is the appropriate person for any questions about it.
Yeah. And, you know, I think we have, if we haven't passed it out already, we brought information up, and you have this on the handout, I guess, on how to apply for our services. So if you have difficulty with, you know, doing this on your own, it is something that we can, you know, assist you with. So you should definitely apply, especially for things like that.
Answer simple questions, like if I'm working on expungement and I'm not understanding something.
No, but the person at the, you know, solicitor's office, I mean, you can apply, and like I said, our services are not guaranteed, and so just because you apply, it might be an area law that we practice in, doesn't mean that we're gonna accept your case. And so sometimes, but there is a person designated at each solicitor's office who's supposed to help you with the process. So if it's a
When
simple
you're,
question,
when you're going through that application and filling it out and you have questions, that's definitely who you should give the
They're
questions.
not always, because Pickens County wasn't helpful at all.
That's unfortunate, you know, I located the Greenville office, you know, and they were really helpful.
Green is great, yeah.
Yeah, they've been great, but I haven't had experience with Pickens, so that's unfortunate. But they are required, you know, to have some because it can, I don't know what can be done about that, or if you can try to go to.
Because they're the one that told me that you can't get any conviction expunged.
That's not.
If you were convicted, you could never get it expunged.
Well, that's not correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's wrong, so.
Yeah, I found that out.
And it shows
Yeah.
you can't listen to everybody that walks into it.
You gotta call around and get a different answer.
Just one.
You're right about that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're having trouble in that way at with a particular county, that certainly would be something that you might want to apply for our services to help you get through that hurdle. But also, you know, the particular law that requires them to help, you know, is something that's valuable to you to sort of cite to them when they say, oh no, there's nothing that can be expunged.
Right. So like I said, if you have, you have the handout and that tells you, well, no, I am eligible for this, and they're telling you no, yeah, go ahead and apply.
Did they even know what you were talking?
We didn't get that
You
far.
didn't
There was
even.
no convictions to be expunged,
Okay.
which I'm gonna call around and get my answer that I need, but
Yeah.
that was the first call and the first response.
Hmm.
That's right. So let me see if there was any other questions. So one of the other questions that we get frequently is, what happens after you get the expungement? Are you required to, if a prospective employer asks you, do you have a criminal record? And you had something on your record that was expunged. What are you supposed to say? And so actually under our laws, only two of the categories explicitly say the conditional discharge and the PTI. Those two laws say explicitly that if your record's been expunged under those two categories, you do not have to report to anybody that you have a criminal record. The other categories are silent on this issue, but it's generally recognized that you do not have to tell anybody that you have a criminal record after it's been expunged. But it's not, it's general.
I applied for application. I come back, I didn't even know this was on my record, but I didn't get the job. So the guy told me, am I a felon? And I told him, no, I ain't never been to prison or nothing like this. But I got convicted of criminal domestic violence, fight with a girlfriend, Spring 2000. I didn't do no jail time, okay, fine. So I didn't think I was a felon about it. Come to find out I am. So this is what I'm trying to get cleared off my record here.
That seems interesting. I mean, if it was it depends on was it an aggravated, high and aggravated criminal domestic violence? Yeah. So it's one of those things that you have, run your SLED report and see what it actually says, what the actual charge is.
Well, see, on top of this too, over the years, I even bought up handguns. Then I got arrested one other time for driving on suspension. They didn't want to get my pistols back. Come to find out they used this, I'm a felon, so I was supposed to have. But I'm like, well, I bought them legally, so don't you guys do your background check? And this is.
I'm kind of concerned if you didn't do jail time, that's unusual to be charged with a felony. So, like I said, that's like see what the actual SLED report says, what the actual charges were, because if you didn't do jail time, that seems unusual that you would have a felony. And if it's from 2000, that's something.
That's over the 5 year.
Yeah, like it might be eligible, but it might be, if it's high and aggravated, that won't be expungible. But if it's, a simple CDB charge and 5 years have elapsed, that should be eligible.
All right.
And that could be one of those things that we talked about. It could be an error. And that is something that SLED helps with, to verify.
But it's going to cost me like $310.
Yes. I got it. Well, at least run the SLED report first, and that's something, like I said, and if you're having trouble, it might be an error, and that's separate. You don't have to pay, the $300 and so forth. That could be just the $25 to SLED.
I had a question, going back on my felony from California. Is that something that should be put, they ask if you ever been convicted of a felony or, I'm not sure if they ask if in the state or anything, but is it just in general or?
It usually is in general.
It's in general.
Right, and so you don't know what database the prospective employer is using. And so, if it doesn't say, usually they aren't going to limit it to just this county or the state. It's just going to be in general. Do you have a criminal conviction? So be truthful about that. Let's see, I don't think we had any other questions. So yeah, also one of the things we wanted to emphasize that this is only applicable for South Carolina, no federal charges, no other state charges. Any other questions?
Yeah, excuse me.
Sure.
Is there a fee at the solicitor's office if you go to check on the information that you was talking about?
So, like I said, so normally yes, and so it's that $250 that you have to do the application. So first though, the best thing to do is check your SLED report, that's the $25, and see what's on there, and based on the handout, you can compare it and see if there's anything that might be expungible. And so that's the best way to do it for the lowest cost. And then if you do determine that there's something that's eligible for expungement, that's when you pay the $250 to the solicitor's office to apply for it. That will review your record, see what's expungible, and then they'll move forward with the expungement.
That's not a guarantee, though.
Not a guarantee, no, because there are some limitations. And so one of the things is that, like I said, if the charges were dismissed, if charges were not prosecuted, those should all be expunged, except if, let's say you had multiple charges surrounding one criminal activity, and one of the charges or two of the charges were dismissed as part of a plea deal, those are not going to be expungible. So that's why they have to take time to review your criminal record. So like I said, if it's just one charge and it says dismissed or not prosecuted, that's okay. But if you had the armed robbery, you had the intent to distribute, you had multiple crimes that all resulted from one activity, and they decide to dismiss one or two as part of a plea deal, those are not going to be expungible. So that's why it's not straightforward. That's why they have the application fee, and that everything has to be reviewed. Any other questions?
I do, but
Sure.
I want to talk to you all.
Okay.
Yes. I have a question about the private databases. How often are those updated with the SLED information? So if someone does get an expungement and 2 years down the road, it's gone, but these private databases that employers are using, what's the turnaround on that? It is there.
There is no turnaround, there is no requirement, so that is one of those things that, one, like I said, if it's something that's available to the public or being used, you have the right now with that new law. If it's been expunged, you have a right to contact that database and say, take it down. I'll give you a copy. But they are not required to be updating it or, so forth. And that's one of the reasons that Ms. Susan was mentioning about the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So if you weren't hired because of something that was actually done wrong on the report,
Sure.
then you have a cause of action against that agency for misreporting information.
So even though you've got the expungement, you still need to do your due diligence.
Yes,
on the
absolutely.
back end for private databases.
Yes, exactly, and that's why there's so many and they're prolific.
They are.
And it's just that's the hard part. And so at least, and before there was just nothing to be done about that as far as getting it removed. But now there is that new law, and in South Carolina it says if you do any sort of business or your internet is being accessed in South Carolina, you are subject to South Carolina law and South Carolina jurisdiction, and therefore they have to remove it. But then it's like if they don't, you have to bring a lawsuit against them. It just makes it a little hard.
Mm-hmm.
So at least there's some sort of cause of action, but it's not the easiest one, though. But yeah, that's the difficult part. So I think that they're constantly updating them, and then if they're running one specific to you, they should be running, they probably won't be running an old one, they'll be running a new
Sure.
one. And so they want the latest because it doesn't do them much good if they're running a 2-year-old record, because you could have had new crimes since that time. So that's why if it's going to be something specific to you as a prospective applicant, I would think they're going to run the latest report. And the SLED is probably the best if you're just doing a South Carolina company, because that's the most thorough one. Because a lot of them other ones might not show, other just arrests or traffic and those sorts of things. So I think we've had some great questions today. I know I think it's a little disappointing to see how limited the expungements are, but as far as the Plan B for the pardons and Plan C for the federal bonding program, and a little bit of expansion and protections with this new, the new additions to the expungement law. Be a little bit helpful.
Are you familiar with all the expansions?
So
that are
the,
gonna be
So the expansions, like I said, it's only added that one extra category for the simple drug possession or simple drug possession with intent to distribute. It's the only thing that was added to the categories. They had a little bit of expansion to like the Youthful Offender Act and a little bit of clarification language added to that. Like I said, they added the provision to go ahead and have that private donation fund to help cover the costs of the expungement application, and then just then the employer immunity for hiring somebody with an expunged record.
That's the one that's supposed to be coming into effect in January?
I would think about January, and so this is one of the legislative questions that we've been going through this week, and I've been asking a lot of people. So it was supposed to go into effect 6 months after the governor signed the law, but he vetoed it, and so it was overridden about a month later by both. And so it was like, when does it go into effect? So the legislative people we've talked to said it should be 6 months from the time it was overridden by the House and Senate, which were on the same day.
Can you find the bill anywhere online?
Absolutely. So yes, absolutely. Not just new expungement law. And so that's interesting because if you can always check what the current, so I've been checking daily what the current law is, and so it hasn't changed yet. And then I just went through the new law, and it tells you specifically what was added. Yes.
Okay, could you clarify for me? You said DUI wasn't expungable. What about the pardon thing? Is it, you said
Yes,
all
and
crimes?
everything and anything is eligible for a pardon.
So is that in the 60% category to get expunged?
Yeah, it depends. It's not so much the crime, it's just the overall you as a person. That's why you get those letters. It's good to write an honest, letter, like how you've been reformed, how you are a better citizen now, how that happened 10 years ago, and I volunteered to this community, I've had nothing since, just show that you're a good citizen now. You get your letters of recommendations from neighbors, employers, anybody from your church, then you have your witnesses. So the strongest case that you put in at the beginning makes it, so it doesn't matter what the crime was, it just matters to show that you've been reformed and are eligible for a pardon.
And it won't be able to come up on a credit check or?
It'll come up.
It'll come up?
But it shows pardon. And so like I said, that looks much better than just the regular criminal charge. So that's why it is a very viable secondary option if your charges aren't expungible, because to show that you've been pardoned looks pretty good. It looks much better than just having the regular criminal record. Yes, sir.
If you get pardoned or expunged, did you say that does exclude them from, exclude you from the insurance liability thing?
No, no, that's available for everybody and anybody.
No, I mean, what I'm saying
federal bonding, or?
if you get a pardon or an expungement, are you still, will places still deny you insurance? Or does it vary?
You mean like car
Can
insurance?
they, no,
or
I'm talking
what?
about
The
the
federal
employment
bond-
insurance,
federal
or can
bonding.
they still?
The federal bonding program? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about if you get a pardon or an expungement, can they still hold it against you as far as insuring you
But what type of insurance?
for employment?
Oh, you mean like the unemployment insurance?
Are you still considered high risk?
Well, so if you've been expunged, there's no record of your
Okay.
criminal record.
Okay.
If you've been pardoned, it still has the criminal record. But that's why we talk about that federal bonding program that's free
So
for
you
the
can use
employer
your
and
bond.
employee, because if the insurance company for your employer liability insurance, that's why they have that free federal bonding program that eliminates any risk to the employer for hiring somebody with a criminal record.
Okay.
Because then the burden then falls on the federal government who's gonna cover that.
And that's for any.
That's for anything.
Okay.
So, yes, anybody can apply for that.
Okay, good.
Yes.
And they said that a charge is consecutive, and I was told that it could not be expunged. Is that true?
That's probably, it depends on which category, but yes, usually there's a period that you can't have any other offense within a certain period of time. So if you had it within 6 months, a year, depending on what the charge was, yes, like that, it could be, it's usually for just one simple minor offense. So even if they were like within a few days or months or a year, yes, there could be a limitation for the expungement. Good question. Any other questions? Yes, I'm sorry, sir.
Does your procedure include federal convictions?
No, this was just for South
So
Carolina.
I'm in the wrong place.
Yes, this is only for South Carolina.
Federal firearms convictions, where do I gotta go?
most likely, I don't know, we don't handle those type of cases, but I would probably say recommend you go to the FBI to see what sort of expungement procedures they have, because that would be federal jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome, sir. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.